Hey guys, this will be video 3 for the how to design build a custom 50s era Explorer. And I'm going to try to keep this video really light because this is take 3 of about 30 minutes worth of conversation that was just way too long-winded. So I'm going to try to keep myself reeled in as much as I can, but also not be a waste of time, because if you're getting ready to build a guitar, you want to hear some really sound information. And let's say you're going to build your guitar, and from the standpoint of you're going to make your own templates out of acrylic or plywood. And if you're going to make your own templates out of acrylic freehand, that's going to be really hard, because you got to take your drawing and put it on a clear piece of plastic, and then either jigsaw it out or bandsaw it out and start sanding it. So I say do this. Build your template out of plywood first, and if you mess up, well, you could fix it with epoxy, or you can work your way to the finish line. And then if you really love what you see on wood, then make your acrylic template. So I did just that. I went to my local big box and I paid like $11 for a really nice piece of CDX. There was no sense in getting birch or anything like that. This is plenty good enough. There'll be some pockets in it once I jigsaw it open, but I'll come in and fill it with epoxy and seal the edge with really nice thin what I call jet glue or CA glue, and that'll guarantee that I got a really hard edge. And again, if you're building a custom guitar, excuse me, you'll once you build it out of plywood, you could then hang this on the wall and really ask yourself, yeah, do I like that? Or maybe those shoulders are a little too left, a little too right, or maybe it's too long, or it's too short, or it's whatever it is. You can make changes on the plywood, just like you see where I did here, where I had a different control cavity design, and then I was like, no, that's way too much. So I epoxied all this wood back in, and then I came up with my new configuration. So use this cheap plywood. Well, this is not cheap plywood. This is vintage Douglas fir marine grade plywood. And if you look at that core, that's really, it's amazing. That's probably I think that's about 75 years old, 80 years old, and it's as straight today as it was when it came out of the shop. But build your templates out of plywood, and then make the determination whether you want to turn them into acrylic. Because see, if you got your acrylic coming in, then now you could take your plywood template and then just run your router around there and make for a very precise, very beautiful, clean edge, because that's virtually impossible to do freehand without just an enormous amount of handwork, and also keeping it square, very unlikely. So, not to be negative. So how do you build a guitar? You start on paper, and then you move to plywood, and then you build. You either just use your plywood to build a guitar, or make your acrylic. Now, what I did with this guitar, not that I've never built a guitar neck before, because I've built plenty, but I always like to keep my ego in check, and just go ahead and build the neck on paper, the actual width. Now, I went ahead, just for my own future references, I went ahead and made this a 24 fret neck. That's not what's going to go on here. It's going to be the traditional 22 fret neck. So this guitar neck will basically get cut off at the 23rd fret. If it were a Les Paul custom, I'd cut it off at the 23rd, less the binding. Okay, so always keep that in the back of your mind. Just know where these points are, because see, you might get a future job where the guy or the girl's like, oh, I really need a 24 fret guitar. Well, when you engineer and when you calculate your fretboard scale and layout, I always calculate a 25 fret guitar. And you might be thinking there's no such thing. Well, that 25th fret location gives me the end of the fretboard. Okay, so then I make my template, and I ask myself, is everything about my my calculation coming together and fitting this drawing, and it's spot on. I'm going to be connecting at the 19th fret, so I know that I'm identical right there, and I'm in good hands because the width the width of my paper neck at the 19th fret is my exact target location that I want the guitar to finish out at. So go ahead and make your templates as perfectly precise as the guitar you're building, and then as you're roughing out the lumber, then if you drew a pencil line with a 7/10 or a five, even like a 5/1000 mechanical pencil, then you make the decision of which side of the pencil line to cut the or rough the neck out. Okay, so let me check the time. Was that 6, 7 minutes? Or no, it's 5:55. All right, so basically 6 minutes of plywood guitar building. And the cool thing about this right here, obviously, let me just get those aside, and we'll talk about that paper template a little bit more. But as I've already mentioned, I paid like $11 for this, and it allowed me to discover some things that had I just taken that piece of paper and laid it atop my $350 Korina, I would have screwed up because where he has his locations drawn, he has it drawn with a 25-inch scale, and I'm going to be building a 24 3/4 inch scale. You build your own guitar per your own taste, but just know what it is you're building, and once you make that decision, then commit, because everything that you do here, everything that happens from either the body side of that not that location right there and the next side of that location is going to be determined upon your scale. And notice how I said location. I didn't say the 19th fret, even though that's what is traditional. You might elect to build your guitar at the 18th fret. So just once you make your decisions, commit, because anything that you do will define everything. Okay? So and that ought to make perfect sense, because if you're at this stage and watching my video series, you've already come to the realization that, wow, okay, the Fender guitar is different than the Gibson, et cetera, et cetera. And it might be that the Gretsch and the Gibson are identical, or it may just be that they're identical on paper. But in reality, one might be a 24.562 scale and one might be a 24 3/4, but both manufacturers claim that their scale is a 24 3/4. Okay, because they know that the end user doesn't need the specific details of, you know, how, all those things. They just want the guitar to stay in tune and sound good. So start on paper. If you can't find this source, Electric Herald was the website where I found these drawings, and I'm extremely, extremely happy with this cutout right here. It took me probably 35 minutes to cut that out. Cut that out with an X-Acto knife, even watching which side of the ink line I was cutting on, and because I basically wanted the black line to disappear, but just barely disappear. Because if you start getting off a 30-second as you go from the paper to the wood to the other guitar after you build the thing, well, you'll either be almost an eighth of an inch too small or an eighth of an inch too big. So always be real careful about being very precise. Okay, and sometimes it helps to just have the case in hand, because if you don't know, it would be wise to maybe have the case and just make sure that it fits in the case. Especially if you started getting overzealous and mounted this baby at the 20th fret because you wanted to squeeze in a 24 fret guitar, only to realize that, oh wow, now I'm barely fitting in the case or the gig bag or something like that. So okay. Variables, variables, variables that is basically what you'll be dealing with. Now, in reference to these plans, I may have mentioned it already, and I apologize if this is a repeat. But again, I discovered that when he drew this plan, the footprint was perfect, but he has this drawn at a 25-inch scale. which is not correct for a Gibson. But the cool thing is, on his blueprint or on his plans, he actually said up at the top, please note that this is just a general assessment. Um, so you'll have to lay all of this control out based on your own scale, you know, as I just mentioned. And now this location right here will be very much accurate. And this pick guard location will be identical as well, because it's got to be, the same offset from the outside perimeter, but the end of your fretboard might be a little bit further in or a little bit further out. So that would cause this pick guard to possibly have to be machined customed, or or at least just be aware of it. Typically what happens is this location up here remains consistent or very close to consistent, whether you're a 24.562-inch scale or a 24 3/4 inch scale. You can get away with it if it's a 25-inch scale, but if you jump up to a 25.5-inch scale, you're gonna have to this pickup is gonna move in a little bit because the fretboard is gonna get a little bit longer. And then if this pickup moves in, uh, that's considerable. Building this guitar at a 25.5-inch scale, you have to know what you're doing, because everything's going to change. And I'm going to stop talking about hypothetical situations because I don't want to put anybody to sleep. But there's nothing wrong with doing the custom scale, the 24 fret fretboard, but just understand that your pickup is going to end up being about 3/8 to nearly a half of an inch deeper into the body, and then every bit of this is going to move, and then you're going to look at that guitar and go, something's weird, something's going on, and even the untrained eye will realize that it's not historically accurate. And that's why I always drive home, we're going to build it per 50 specs. And when I say 50 specs, it'll be 24.75-inch scale and nothing else. That's historically accurate. Okay, so let me check the time again, because I want to keep this video around 20-25 minutes. I don't want to get too long-winded here, but I do want to talk about some of the things that are going on with the guitar. Got the bridge ends, beautiful, uh, uh, unfinished solid brass saddles, Cluson gold. Those are steel. They're magnetic. Just trust me. Those are really heavy duty steel, and those are going to be brass. So brass saddles. It's going to sound incredible. Got the frets in, and got the mother of pearl in from Stuart McDonald. Got the truss rod in. Talk about that stuff, and got the bone nut. I went ahead and got that exactly 1 11/16. So it's almost kind of like a snap type model. It's pre-machined. And when I say pre-machined, that's probably done with a CNC machine. It's perfect. Even the offset on the string location, but you can still change it a little bit since this headstock will be different. So anyway, Cluson tuners. Let's take a real quick look at these. Really beautiful. There's your ferrule, the press-in ferrule bushings, and then all the little gold screws. But as I mentioned, talking to the client, hey, how do you feel about me taking some of this brand new edge off of these and relicking them? Oh, just a little, not Joe Strummer. And we joked about, he said I got a Joe Strummer, man. It's like a train ran over it, and that's extensive what they did with that guitar. But nonetheless, I was really excited to see that these were a much more, get some white behind it. Here we go. That's a beautiful amber. In the image, they looked more green, and I was so happy to see that. That's a very nice replication of the vintage amber color. So Cluson Deluxe, they actually have the stamp, very smooth, nice little tuners. And as I had mentioned, notice how, see, that has the end there, and then you'll have one right here. See, that'll be one of the middle locations. They'll be budding, they're called back to back. And that's what I meant by when you're laying out your post to post spacing, that can't vary. That has to be exact. And that's when I got excited when I saw that the guy that designed these plans, he engineered that correctly. So that was a very comforting uh, revelation to see that he took the time to really research things like that. If he had have missed it, would have been no big deal. I would have just laid it out per the E to E location, making certain that these go back to back and look historically accurate. So very happy with those. Um, and what else? Let me check the time. Let me get this stuff off the table because I want to declutter as much as possible as I'm going through this process, and kind of just look at the table and start emptying the table because I don't have a point list. And I think if I just look at what's in front of me, I can just knock the job out. So you're going to build your template from the plywood. You've made your assessments based on what was drawn, what was designed, and you might realize that, wow, what a blessing it was that I didn't order a set of $100 templates from someone and wait 2 weeks, only to realize that they were off a little bit or a little bit too flat here and not real historically accurate, or maybe they were way too pointed down here. And I hope this is showing up in the camera because this is a real faint pencil line. But I'll basically will just be jigsawing this out and then putting it on my oscillating sander and using all these different oscillating, these different radius. And let's cover this. This is pretty important. See, let's start at the tightest point first. That's not going to work. Okay, let's see if that's in the camera. Yeah, that's not going to work. And believe it or not, you might think, oh, well, that one's got to be perfect. Believe it or not, it's not. It looks like it, but when I hold this up to that paper, there's still daylight showing right there. So you're going to have to step down to that one right there. And if you're building the Explorer, just know the 2-inch diameter, it might be drawn. That might be 2 inches, which it is, and that might be perfect, but you can't sand it with rubber. So you've got to assess the fact that you've got the 2 1/16 of an inch, and then factor in just a little bit of wobble. If you've got an oscillating sander that might be worn out a little bit, be so careful. So I say that to say this: the 2-inch diameter is way too big for that smallest cut right there. You're going to have to step down to the 1.5 inch, which will be 1 9/16 of an inch diameter. There's not one in between that, not on my oscillating sander. But this one will be perfect for doing all of the real soft, subtle radius work right there. And then this being an outside line, you might be tempted to come in with like a flat board and start shaping it, but that is such an unbelievably long arc right there that if you can cut it on this plane perfect, you might be able to match the pencil line, but the odds are you're probably going to travel a little bit. So be very careful. It'd be best if you had a disc, like a flat disc, and a table that you could trust. That would guarantee, and I'm just talking about building the template. I'm not talking about building the body yet, but that would guarantee that your template stays perfectly square. That's so critically important. The thicker your template, the more square it has to be. The thinner your template, you can get away with a little bit of fluctuation, but that's not something you want when you're getting ready to route a $350 board. Okay, check the time again. 19 minutes. So, oscillating sander, probably one of the best investments you'll ever make in your shop. And I'm going to get that off the table. And the cool thing about this process of building it on plywood is obviously you'll have the template for a future build, but you'll also have it, as I may have be repeating and mentioning, you can, no, I did not mention this. You could go ahead and install your strap buttons and just see what does the guitar feel like on your person. And you might realize that, oh wow, this thing is a lot bigger than I realized because I'm not a big guy and I probably would look a little bit funny playing this guitar. So I would probably be scared to build this guitar for myself personally. But at least if you build it on a piece of $10 plywood and you change your mind, you're not out, all that much. And if you've already ordered your wood, well, you might want to consider repurposing your wood, or do whatever you want to do. Okay, sky's the limit. So as I mentioned, this was free. Can't beat that. Electric Herald is his website, and man, he's got some incredible guitars. I think only a few of the guitars and basses that he has does he charge for, but his prices are really fair for the most part. Most of the guitars you can download them, and even he mentioned on his website. Here's how you go about it: you download it and you take it to your local print shop, and then they transfer it into their print file, and then they work their magic at the print shop and print it off accordingly. The only thing I wish I could have figured out how to have done is to have gotten the print shop to rotate the plans 90 degrees so that at least I could have gotten one print off the full guitar, because that would have been so cool. If anything, just to spray adhesive it to some plywood and hang it on the wall in my shop, and just kind of, it'd be like kind of a three-dimensional picture of an actual flying V. But they couldn't do it, but I'm sure it could be done. So anyway, all right, what would be the next thing to talk about? I'm not really going to talk about router bits other than, I guess I will. This is pretty important. This is extremely important. Uh, these are really affordable bits. I buy them off eBay. And I've kind of bought them thinking, they'll probably wear out and I'll just throw them away. But these are carbide, and we're talking $10, $15 each, for a 3/4 inch with a ball bearing on a 1/2 inch shank. That's unheard of. But you got one of two options. The bearing is, I'm just going to hit this. This is just general conversation, probably for the guys that are viewing this as entertainment. Because if you're really a woodworker, you probably know more about routing than I do. So you either have the bearing on the bottom, or according to how it is, the top, or on the shank. And then according to where the template goes on the end wood product will determine which bit you have to use. See, if you had the template on top of the body and you were coming out of the a tabletop router, well, the guitar is much thicker. The body alone is too thick, and then it's just not going to work. So you might have to come in from the top first and do some stepped routing. So in other words, you've got your real nice guitar body down here with the template on top, and then you're freehand routing it from overhead, and you got a really good base on your router, and you're letting that bearing run on the plywood. And then you could step up to the bigger bit, and that's why I bought these, just because they're brand new and they'll make really precise cuts, because that's how I'm going to rough out this body. And then it might be that once I get close to the end, I might chuck this up in the tabletop router, and my router table, and then the template will still be atop the guitar body. And then, in other words, I didn't have to take the template off and put it up under the bottom side. Once you have that template fastened, do the whole job. Don't dare take it off. You guys know that. But then I might change over to this 3-blade and then route off the bottom of the body. why am I bringing this up is because, let's see, where is it? Oh, it is on the table. You might be tempted to use something like that, but very unlikely, very unlikely that you're going to be able to do one clean route. I'm moving that, but if you put it on a table, odds are when you come around this corner right here, it's going to catch and it's going to tear this corner up, or it's going to, or when you come around this corner, because because it's turning this way, and I know that as you're coming around this, it has a tendency to tear out right there. Or if you're coming around this side with a climbing cut, it'll kind of grab and try to take off. The same thing when you're coming around here. If you were doing a climbing cut when you got right here, you would want to grab and it probably would tear that corner off. So stay away from one shot operations. Work your way to the finish line. Maybe make your template about a 32nd of an inch bigger all the way around. Therefore, it will be a 16th of an inch bigger in width and length. That way, you can finish the guitar. You truly bring yourself to the finish line with your oscillating table. Okay, so don't. And that was one of the biggest mistakes I made when I first started building guitars, because I had a lot of woodworking experience, but I wasn't really proficient working with a router. And I made the assumptions that, well, if you get really high quality bits, you can machine that finished, almost finished to the guitar. But any quality woodworker that has been working wood for a long time, they know that what finishes a really high quality project is sandpaper. It's not the tools, it's not the bits, it's the sandpaper, and it's not even the rasps. The rasps or files will get you right up to where you want to be, and then your sandpaper is what carries you over the finish line. Okay. And again, you woodworker guys, you already know that stuff. But if you don't have an oscillating table and you're wanting to build a guitar, uh, all I can say is please invest in one, because it'll make your job so much easier. They have dust control, and if you're working with exotic woods, this is not something you want, that those dust particles in the air, especially if you have children in the house. So do some research about that, because young children, their immune systems are not up to par for domestic woods, let alone woods from other countries. You can really do some incredible harm to your family, especially your young ones. Okay, so be careful with your woodworking. And let me check the time. What should I talk about? Because I don't want to waste anyone's time, but I also don't want to just blow through this video and not cover something that might be critical. I really can't think of anything, because I talked enough about the importance of building it on paper first, and then that really allows you to start, processing through things. Um, it just does, and also as you start seeing it on paper, go from paper to the plywood, it really starts motivating you to really move forward with the job. And also, once you determine that you love everything about what you see, once you have this actual template, in the Explorer. And I didn't want to rough it out and then do the video, so I'll just show it here. So once you have your Explorer in hand and you know that everything about your work is exactly what you want, and you came in and made corrections about things that you thought were correct, but you changed your mind, then you're able to just put this atop your really high quality wood and come in with your router overhead and start easing your way to the finish line. You know, that's a cutting cut, and this is a climbing cut. If you're moving in that direction, I think no, I'm sorry. This is the cutting cut. This is called a climbing cut when you're pulling this way, but don't do climbing cuts unless you know what you're doing. A lot of times I'm doing climbing cuts, but man, they'll get you in trouble, especially around those outside corners. Okay. And I would say if you're getting ready to build this guitar and you've got over $500 in your wood, I would strongly recommend building the template out of plywood. You really don't need the acrylic if you did a really good job getting all this true. You could go from the plywood directly to your guitar body. And let's say you got $1,000 worth of wood and you've never built this guitar. I would strongly recommend buying about $70 worth of poplar. And I didn't misspeak, but like a poplar wood, and glue that wood up just to build a sample guitar and see how the router reacts to machining that poplar, and build a 3/4 inch thick Explorer, Flying V, Les Paul Jr., Telecaster, whatever it is you're building, and then get a feel for the router. And then you'll be more confident to realize, yeah, when I make this pass around this corner, I like the way it feels when I'm moving in this direction, and it guarantees me that I get a real clean cut. Because when you're coming around that chintzy little corner right there, you you so here's where you'll lose your job. If the router tips like this, the bit will go into the side of the body and it'll be game over. You'll be shortening that piece unless it tipped over so much that it caught, and then it tears off the corner. Okay, and again, your first guitar, you might want to make sure that it's paint grade. So build it out of poplar first, 3/4 inch thick, and then what can you do with that poplar? Well, you spray paint it like Eddie Van Halen, and make a clock out of it, or turn it into art and hang it on your shop wall as your prototype before you pull the trigger on the high dollar wood. And I'm speaking mostly to the guys that are kind of excited about doing this, but they've never screwed up $1,000 piece of wood and had to live with that. And I have done that before, where I was working with wood that I had no business working with, or at least I should have done some prototype building before I pulled the trigger on the tool on something that valuable. But I know for a fact that even even though I've built a lot of guitars, the fact that I have not built this guitar yet, I'm going to keep my ego in check. I'm going to make certain that I process through this build. And if I get into some sort of weird hiccup with this plywood, I'm going to do that exactly what I just said. I'm going to buy some poplar, glue it up, and build it out of poplar first, just a 3/4 inch thick, and then I'll move to my Korina, and then I may elect to not dare let the big bits anywhere near it, and I may just really ease my way to the finish line with a real clean bit like that. And again, the reason I brought up the whole how do you truly cross the finish line? You cross it with sandpaper, and typically real nice maple blocks. And you're just getting a feel for it, working around these corners, making certain that you don't lose those dimensions right there. And that's kind of it. So I'm going to end the video right there. I can't think of anything else to cover other than I think it's going to be an extremely fun project to build. And by doing it on plywood, that will so take the stress off of the whole operation. And also, and I'm repeating myself, but because it'll also give you some artwork for your shop. So anyway, I appreciate you guys checking in. If you got any questions or comments, just let me know, and I'll be happy to help you out as much as I can. Otherwise, I'll see you guys in the next video. Thanks.